Our guest today is Ingrid, a seasoned leader with a wealth of experience in organizational transformation, talent retention, and executive coaching. With a background in global leadership roles and a passion for data driven strategies, she founded Penrose AP to help businesses navigate change while keeping their top talent engaged. In this episode, Ingrid shares her journey from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship, discussing the key challenges of merger, acquisition, and change management. We explore the balance between qualitative and quantitative insights in coaching, the role of effective communication, and how businesses can foster loyalty during transition. Stay tuned for an insightful conversation packed with leadership wisdom. Thank you for joining me today, Ingrid.
Hi, thank you, Naveen.
So let's start with talking about your career journey. It's quite interesting. Going from molecular biology, then doing an MBA, then global leadership roles, and now entrepreneurship. What inspired you to take such a diverse trajectory?
That's a very good question, actually. So, molecular biology came up as a passion already in school, and I would say it was a bit inspired by a very nice teacher. We were young little girls, and they tend to fall in love with nice looking teachers, but he was really great. He made us really love the science of biology, of the molecular biology. It was actually an easy thing to decide for it. And then I applied. In Germany, at these times, you had to apply to get a place in college. I got one, so all started. During the college time, I really figured out that standing alone in the laboratory, which is the way how a molecular biologist really works, wasn't something for me. I realized that I needed people around me. So I said, okay, all what I learned, really great, but I need to do something else with that background. So I applied for my first job in a pharmaceutical company because I thought that's close enough. And I got a job as a sales rep. Actually, I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. It wasn't very easy to get jobs at that time in my generation. So I took it. I tried out. I tried it, and it were 3 years of intense learning because my customers, my clients I visited were all working in these huge, actually molecular biology institutions. And so all conversations were about science. I hardly sold something. I just had a good time with people. But I think they liked me as well. So, and there was always a good relationship with that company I was working for. So got it. And then, after 3.5 years in the field, I said, well, good enough. I think I need to grow within that company and got my first office job in that one, which brought me much closer to marketing and business. I realized it's as well important to understand what actually is a business about.
Mhm.
That was leading to going for that MBA. Fortunately, a
Yeah.
company paid for it, so I could choose a really good school, which was Henley Management School in the UK. Going back into the office, it was super helpful that I did that because it helped me to grow within roles. So from this loneliness in the laboratory to working with, first of all, small teams, then they were growing and growing more and more in relationships. Not leadership was coming along with that, but relationships with so many different cultures in the world. I started traveling to all over places. So I've been on every continent in this world, on this earth, during these business times, always visiting colleagues and having really great time and supporting them.
Yeah.
Coming together with as well building up international teams. So I had teams in the US, in Germany, in France, in Switzerland, uh, in Singapore. So I mean we were really spread all over all time zones, which is really a challenge when you're spread over all time zones to find a slot in the hour to work. But that's how this works.
Yeah.
And leadership was becoming such a great passion. I mean, you cannot believe it. It was shining, let me say it like that, in front of my mirror. But many people actually gave me that feedback as well. And I was so thankful and grateful for getting all that feedback because it helped me growing further and further. And it helped me to create and integrate all the time changes. Change was a something which could happen one after the other. There was never ever a real big topic for me to propose to help people go through the change. Then it happened that there was a huge change coming, not created by my team and myself or by my colleagues and myself. It was coming from more the upper management. The situation changed. This change wasn't performed well in regards to taking care of the people impacted by the change, including myself.
Yeah.
And that was ultimately leading to the fact that I said, well, that can really be done better. And I have done it better for many, many years. So why not taking that challenge, stepping out, and for the last remaining years of me being a working lady, I just get there and I'm offering all that experience to others who are going and navigating through transformations and transitions to help them really doing it well. And so that was the introduction of Penrose.
Yeah, so Penrose is a business you started, and I have so many follow-up questions on your based on your last response. So I just want to say that the experience and the career journey is fascinating, and how it must have been contributed to your unique perspective on leadership and change. And I want to talk to you about change, leadership, and transition period, and all those kind of things. And let's start with Penrose. So starting Penrose must have been a bold step. So, what was the turning point that convinced you that it was the right time to launch your own business?
I would say with that last experience of a change, which was in my perspective. I mean, others would not agree. Just let me say it like that. It was a very personal thing. A couple of others shared it with me, but in our perspective, it was not performed very well in respect to the people topics. So I decided, well, that's good enough. I cannot help it in this moment. But I know that so many companies are struggling with this aspect.
Yeah.
And after, I mean, it really took me, so I left my corporate contract. And it took me a couple of months, let's say 2.5 months of grieving. It was really a bit of grieving, having been so many years in such roles, and all of a sudden there was nothing anymore. But I'm usually a very positive person, so I couldn't stand it, and I said, okay. I mean, I have energy enough. I have so much experience. I have an idea how to do it better. So why not just doing? And it's super easy in Switzerland, and I guess in many other countries as well, to open an own little LLC. I got a little bit of consultancy from a tax consultant. He helped me through the first steps, getting all bureaucracy done behind it. I had my first website created. When I look back to it, it's horrible. So actually today, have a look at my LinkedIn profile. I launched my version 2.0, much
I
better.
saw. Yeah.
So yeah, that was the tipping point, that big last change. As said before, in my perspective, and I really want to make it clear, I have colleagues who really liked what happened. It's all has to do with your own perspective and with your own experience in such situations. It's very
Abs-
subjective normally.
Absolutely. And then I believe we all have or will have that kind of pivotal and tipping points in our life. And I wish people would be brave enough to take the chance, take the leap of faith, and pursue what they really want to pursue.
Yeah,
So,
correct.
and then you talked about organizational change. Organizational change is very difficult on its own, and retaining talent is one of the biggest challenge for leadership teams during organizational change because of the uncertainty and things like that, right? And in your writings, you emphasize the critical role of retaining talent during organizational change. So what are some of the biggest mistakes companies make when navigating transformation, more specific to talent?
retention?
Yeah, I would list three things mainly. The first is, and maybe that's a bit weird to say it as the first one, companies need to understand what impact they will see if they lose their high performers. That's not a people topic. The topic is really a business topic. They need to buy into unplanned, really unplanned, super high costs. International literature says that it's roughly about something between 75,000 to 250,000, whatever currency you want to apply per talent, which leaves you during a transformation, which you have to put onto your cost bucket when it comes when these things happen. Yes, it breaks down into severance packages, new hiring, because I mean, even if companies do that change to reduce headcount, all statistics say a year after they are building it up again. So they have to invest in new hirings. And then if they have their new hirings, they have to do onboardings and trainings and all that time which goes away. And on top of that an unpredictable number of productivity loss. So that's one of the big things. Higher costs and knowledge loss. That these are the things which companies don't take into consideration when they play for and when they go for a change. Now to the people, what do they do wrong when they even have seen that and they have the biggest ambition to really have the talents staying? They don't individualize their approach. Oh, they do multiple choice surveys. They do communications which never touches a person feelings and emotions, fears with that change. So they don't understand that they need to invest in time for individual conversations, for taking care of each and every person which they regard to be a high performer, which they want to keep. So really going with an average message, which should fit to everybody, ultimately doesn't fit to anyone. And that's the reason why high performers who have a huge expectation, especially when it comes to change, to be integrated, to be taken with it, to be heard, to be listened to, if they are treated like average, that gives them even a kick to leave much more. So it's the unexpected costs, the knowledge loss, and being really taking care of the individual person in the company. And then, yeah, how shall I say that? There are nowadays usually driven by, and some are very proud of it already because they apply AI in their human resource processes, which even adds to the unpersonality and which really keeps the human aspect out of that whole story. And this makes it very, very actually in the perception of all of good people because they expect to be treated differently.
So out of the many mistakes you kind of laid out, the biggest mind-blowing one for me was the hidden cost.
Yes.
So I've been aware of the attrition rate, and when you want to replace someone, it costs something. But that hidden cost that you mentioned, 75,000 to 100,000 per employee.
Yeah.
That's just
I just saw a statistic from the company is called the Work Institute. It's US based, and they usually do an employment report every year. Their employment report about 2023, it takes them always a year more, really says that the yearly quits in 2023 or the annual quit in 2023 in the US, voluntary quit, was about 45 to 50 million people in the US, which is 27% of the total US workforce. Not everything, of course, because of change. They didn't really differentiate that, but you can really think that at least half of it is because of change. And then they came up with the number. And in US terms, they said this was costing the US companies, the corporations, the enterprises, rounded up 1 trillion USD. That's
number.
unbelievable. That's really unbelievable. And only because, from my perspective, because they don't think about that. They just fall into that trap. Nobody thinks about these things when they all think about, yeah, we need a new strategy and we need to transform to this and that, and this all will be fancy and nice and innovative and whatever, but that it has its price if done wrong. I don't say anything against new strategies and making changes and developing, but not taking care of these costs can come to big surprises.
Yeah, and all these insights that you just shared really underscores how critical the human element is to the change management.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I also noticed that you, as part of your Penrose business, you offer data-driven coaching approach, and I would like to pick your brain on it a little bit. So
Thank you. I mean, you heard me saying it's super important to take care of the individual, right? So and coaching is a really great tool to do so. But of course, you want to base the coaching approach on some facts.
of course,
How do you get to that such facts? I mean, imagine a company engages with Penrose, then and they say, okay, we believe we have about 10 talents which we want to keep.
Mhm.
How would these talents trust the coach of Penrose to really work with them on the topic? The trust will come with this data-driven approach. So it starts the work with each of the talent individually and how do you say that? Not in a group, just person per person,
Personalized.
personalized. Yes, we are going through a 9/10 highly sophisticated question interview to get insights on how is that person at the moment seeing his or her situation. What is the knowledge the person has? How does the person describe what's going on in the organization? And that's obviously a qualitative approach. All these answers, and we take 1 or 2 hours to really go through 9 to 10 questions. All the answers are written down by the coach, documented in our tool. And then we use actually a very tiny, small prompt of an AI, which analyzes, gives us an overview about the 10 most used nouns in the context of where were they used. So that really gives a summary of the situation of the person. That's the qualitative approach. It's then combined with a quantitative approach. So each question is used, the interviewee is asked to answer on a score of 1 to 10. How does this person judge let's say, the performance of his organization in this moment? So let's think we talk about communication. So how do you judge the performance of your organization in terms of communication about the change? And the interviewee can say, with a 1, I feel it's really done very, very well, or 10, no, it's super bad. And the second question, quantification question, is what's the relevance for you about that topic? How important is communication for you? And you can as well say 1 is I don't care, and 10 means it's very critical for me. So if the answer is 10/10, then we have a topic here, because this person tells me, or tells the coach, well, it's super bad what's happening here, but it's well super critical for me. So that's for me a signal that I don't like it. I want to leave. This is horrible. I really don't want to stay because of that one aspect. Or maybe there are even more than one of them. They can all 9 of them could be bad, 10/10s. So that's the tool behind it. And after these 2 hours, we have a qualitative thing. We know what are the topics the person really bothers about, and we know very structured in a kind of a matrix. You can, or pie chart, you whatever you want to use as the reporting tool. We have both available. What is the criticality of that person in the report of, yeah, will this person easily leave, or is there still a way to, really work with that person on the topic and hopefully then achieve that he or she doesn't
Yeah.
leave? So that's the data driven. But it's important to do it in that way because otherwise the coaching would not be successful. The person wouldn't trust the coach at all because he knows his company has asked the coach to work with him. And that always has a tricky point.
It is. And it can sometimes, spook people as well, make them unnecessarily worried
Yes.
about things. So that was a very powerful example in the process that you shared. And how can, I think, data be humanized or personalized for the process of change? I got two follow-up questions on that. One is around data and another one is communication. So let's talk about data side. You talked about qualitative and quantitative data, right? And let me generalize this question a little bit. So how do you balance the qualitative and quantitative data in shaping strategy, whether they are change management or transformational or some other strategy?
So our approach is not only I try to explain how it's working with the person, but of course it has a possibility to summarize all the interviews into a overall picture. How is the change by these people who have been interviewed judged upon? And what are the quantification? How is the satisfaction rate of the most important things of these people? And this ultimate overview report can be given if the company really would like to see that. Usually they are very interested in that. Given back either to the management team, leadership team, if they do have a change management team, to the change management team. And they really get some very, very valuable insights out of the overview report to include them then either rethinking the whole strategy or parts of the strategy of the change. I give you an example in a minute, or at least the change management process. One of the questions is the change which you see coming. So the coach is asking the interviewing, the change which you see coming, how strong is the fit of your understanding of the purpose of your organization, which most probably was a reason why you once were interested to be part of that organization.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the people would say, well, that there is no fit any longer. That I don't see the purpose which was so appealing to me no longer at all. Then there is a big thing the management team should think about. That people really see that change coming into a status where people lose their understanding of the purpose of the organization. A very strong feedback. For the change management team, the feedback on the communication, the feedback on how they respect the need for, let's say, support during higher workload, during a change. It's always higher than it's normal, and normally it's always high. It's already very high. So the change management team might need to work on that topic when they get the feedback. So it has an impact what the people are saying, and if you really get that from people individually, but then you can summarize it, has much more value than just doing multiple choice questionnaires with thousands of people because they just tick the boxes without any meaning normally. I mean, we did so many of these, workforce questionnaires. You probably as well. I don't know if Medo does that, and the outcome was always worth nothing.
Well, my experience with all of these, not the coaching part, but the workplace surveys and that sort of things that comes out of people, team, or HR, is that most of the time, good, valid questions in there, but there's rarely anything that has been actioned upon afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my kind of complaint with these kind of surveys and questionnaires. Yeah, nice question to have. We can share our thoughts and views and opinions and feedbacks and suggestions. Most of the companies that I work for kind of didn't fully embrace the results of the surveys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yes, I have the same experience.
Okay, so now moving on to the other question that I had around communication. So
Yeah.
during uncertain times or complex transitions or any kind of change, communication is the key. So ensuring and maintaining effective communication during these times is critical. How do you ensure that communication remain effective during complex transitions, especially across global teams?
Very crucial. Let me start with the global teams at the end of your question. The timing is very, very important here. So global teams are working in different time zones, obviously. And it's so important that all impacted people, all employees should have the same information pretty much at the same time. Because in this world, across global teams, people are connected with each other. And if a team somewhere at the east end of the sun, from our perspective here in Europe, gets some information which the west side only gets pretty much later, it's still okay to have some hours in between. But if you would have days in between, that's not a very good thing. That's absolutely harming the purpose of the communication. So timing is really here a very, very important aspect. To the communication itself, authenticity and truth would be the magic to really make a change successful. People sense when communication is set up in a way that it has some nice wordings, it has some nice slides, but it doesn't explain what's really going on. It's not really telling the latest details. It's shaping the message. And there are really communication experts who are very, very skilled in doing that. But in some of the changes I was going through, and it was the rumors and the talks in the coffee corners. Oh my goodness, another shout out. I cannot believe it any longer. People sense this. People understand, people hear that it's not at least the complete story which they're hearing. I have a huge respect for communication. It's super difficult because, again, you as a change team, as a management team, you communicate to a broad community of people at once. And that's important, as I said before, everybody should have the same information at a very similar time. Everyone, I can't say everyone, but there is a huge variety of how a person understands what is said.
Yeah.
And then the interpretation work is coming. So to do it perfectly, my proposal is always, well, don't communicate at once to the masses. Get some ambassadors, doesn't need to be the leadership team. Some ambassadors taking the messages, go into smaller teams, have the message then conveyed and have discussions. Listen to the questions and really be authentic and be honest and tell the truth about what's going on. And if you don't know, you say you don't know. You don't invent anything. You just be very, very honest with the people. But that, of course, is a huge investment. I mean, there's this big conflict. People expect a big change. People expect a communication every week, let me say it like that, or every month. And if you have an organization of 3,000 or 50,000 people, then how do you do that? This is a very, very big challenge. But trying to give communication a structure in when, who, and what is said and discussed is very important.
I really like your advice, especially the things around timing. A small example is like if you want to give someone feedback, it can ruin, even if it's a constructive feedback, it can ruin the weekend. And it won't allow them to come back to you and ask follow-up questions and things like that. So yes, absolutely agree that timing is critical. Then you talked about authenticity and truth. I would just like to add one more thing, which is quite close to truth, is transparency. And as a leader, if you're transparent about what's going on and what's happening, even though your decision are risking people's job, they would understand to a certain extent, and then they might not push back as hardly as they would have if you weren't transparent or authentic. Moving on to just kind of building upon the theme of transition and change, you have led teams during multiple merger and acquisitions. What have been the most valuable lessons that you have learned? Leadership lessons.
There was only one merger and acquisition in my own culture, residence culture in Germany. The others were somewhere else in the world. So that, of course, leads immediately to the aspect of culture. in communication, in leadership, in understanding, in speaking the language, in whatever you have to be able to really work with these persons or new teams. Because when it comes to a merger and an acquisition, this is hardly eye to eye. Very rarely eye to eye. It's usually a big one buys the smaller ones, and the smaller ones, either they are very, very proud and know of their value, so they really stand up and speak up and say, hey, we bring the value here, so you treat us as we are bringing the value. Or they are very anxious and very afraid of losing their jobs quickly and immediately. So to summarize what I was saying, it's a big change for the company who is acquired, not so much for the one who buys. And you have to do again every aspect which I already talked about before, understand the fears, the emotions, the needs of a individual person.
Mm-hmm.
And as a at that moment leader of the change or leader of that group of people who needs to be integrated, to be aware that this is happening and try to figure out how do people really talk about these things in their culture, in their environment, and how do they speak? Do they even speak, or have they been told not to talk? I mean, that as well can happen. So it's very difficult, much more difficult to get into the people than in the own environment where you know the people for 3, 4, or 5 years. I don't know. All of a sudden, you have a new person in front of you. Interestingly, when it happens to go well, there can be very great friendships coming out of that. I'm still friends with, I would say, 3 or 4 people, which I met first because I was part of the integration team of a merger and acquisition into a smaller company, and worked with these people. And a couple of them are still very, very good friends. So it can work out very well, but you have to be very conscious as a leader of the change when you do it. And imagine the knowledge loss. This is even bigger. You might not even have to invest that amount of money. You have even spent already millions to buy it, so don't care about the rest. But the knowledge loss, if you leave their best people, this is just it can really kill the merger. And 2 years after, the company is just gone, nothing left because the knowledgeable people are leaving.
So one other thing I also wanted to talk to you about was loyalty among employees.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless what type of changes, there's a merger acquisition, you're going through organizational change or business not doing whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I think you kind of indirectly touched upon some of the answer of this question, probably. I wanted to understand, like, what strategies have you found most effective in building or fostering loyalty among employees?
I would need to answer that question with 2 different answers, actually.
Okay,
Maybe they come together at the very end. We will see.
we'll see.
It's a bit a question of the generation. So looking at my generation, I was still grown up in the belief that it is, I don't know if I have to say mandatory, but it's really a good thing to be loyal with your employer. You owe your employer something. That's what I was growing up with. I don't believe that this is still the case, and I don't believe that it should have ever been spoken like that, but doesn't matter. It was in my generation the case. When I was growing into my roles, becoming a leader, I learned that loyalty is coming with building strong relationships, with acknowledging, appreciating what the contribution is and looks like. Even challenging can be a good thing because some people, or a lot of people, if done right, see a challenging feedback, and when it comes with the necessary support to grow out of that feedback very, very nicely, because they grow with it. They understand that they can learn something and they do it. I mean, that really is a very, very important point. I mean, maybe it sounds very easy, but behaving not like an employer, not behaving like a boss, not behaving like a leader, but behaving like a human being which works with another human being. It's like in a big private relationship. You be with each other 8 hours a day, maybe even longer in some cases. So you have to find a way to treat every person you work with a lot of respect, with a lot of appreciation, and with a lot of understanding, help, support, and open feedback and ask for feedback. You want to have your feedback by yourself, and that triggers a lot of loyalty. People can stand a lot of things when they know that there is enough background and there's enough stability in the appreciation for their contribution. Some very, very intensively ask for, I want to contribute. I know I'm good. I really want to contribute here. I want to engage. I really have skills. I have knowledge. I really want to shape what's going on here. And that is ultimately the coaching framework Penrose is leading to.
Yeah.
So when I shared at the beginning, we do these data analytics, interviewing qualitative, quantitative, which leads us to a very good understanding of the perspective in respect to the change. We then talk, Penrose, each letter beginning, first letter of that word stands for something in the coaching framework. E stands for energy. So we look into where's the energy coming from? What is taking energy away
Right.
from the person? N is for negotiation. This is always people like it a lot because they never think about that they need to be capable of negotiating for their own needs. The R is reality. Many shape their own reality, and our coaches, we try to bring them back to have a real look at the reality and understand how it is. Obstacles, what is speaking against everything. Simulation, which brings up the shiny, nice worlds. How will the world look when everything is as you would like to have it? And the E is, and that's what I wanted to come to, is engagement. So what are you as my coachee, what are you talent now do to get engaged? You have to request, you want to get engaged, so ask for it. Don't wait that someone is coming. You propose because you are one of the good ones. You have ideas. You can propose additional things for the change. So here we go. And if someone has gone through these steps, it immediately leads to the fact, at least to a super high percentage, that they even if they didn't like the change up front, they have so much thought about everything and about themselves that their decision is very easily made to stay. So now let me come to the next generation coming, Gen Z. That's a big thing. I'm at this moment trying to figure that out quite a lot. And what I see and what I hear is that the attitude about loyalty in this generation has changed towards, let's say, I'm loyal to the task. My employer gives me a task. We agree it will take 3 years. I fulfill that task. I'm loyal through this fulfillment of the task, and then the task is gone, it's done, full stop, gone. So the understanding of the time frame of they are loyal, but the understanding of the time frame and loyal to an employer as such, the change. That is very interesting. I don't have a recipe yet because it's still leading for the organizations to these super high costs and knowledge loss. I would love to work with a lot of such young people to really understand what's driving them and what is it all about. That this attitude is coming up more and more.
Yeah, I didn't plan to ask this question. This is fascinating what you mentioned about Gen Z and how they kind of perceive the loyalty with the employer. Do you think a lot of it is to blame the employer themselves that they are not kind of doing enough to keep people loyal?
But I think that in these 2 years ago and for the next 5 years, maybe employers need this time to figure out how to behave in these situations. I don't think that they already know. The experience is not high enough. They couldn't try things out. They work like with, not my age, but the people who are now 40, 45, they know exactly. I mean, They say they know exactly. They still need something like Penrose to be successful. But even me at Penrose, I'm sitting here and say I need to really the experience with and talk to a lot of these very young people to try things and to figure out what really feeds them. What is that? What is it? What they expect? And how can we make them understand that it's potentially much more to their benefit if they would stay longer than 3 years?
Mm.
Because starting again and again after 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, I don't know, in a new environment, in a new organization, in a new corporate culture, in whatever, I don't think that this is really of good benefit for themselves.
I think you're being very generous when you said 3 years. Gen Z doesn't even stay more than a year.
Yeah, maybe
Also. So yeah, 3 years, very generous.
hoping that it's at least 3 years. No,
Yeah,
I'm
so
hoping it, but you can be right. It may be about 1 year only.
so I just remembered something you mentioned before we hit recording uh, of this podcast around that in your early career, someone told you that you might not be the right leadership might not be the right path for you.
Mhm.
So could you talk more about it and how did you overcome that and prove otherwise?
Yeah. Well, it happened in I was maybe 2, 3 years in the company and was assigned to take part in a development and analysis program, which, was an assessment center, was talks with some psychologists, and I can't even remember. And it was not only me, where there were a couple of colleagues, good friends at these times.
Mhm.
And the result was after a couple of days that they told me, well, we're sorry, but we don't see you ever to be a leader. I mean, I believe I was 27 years old. Um, and a good friend of mine, he got the same result. So we met at the weekend. There
Yeah.
was lots of alcohol flowing in that story because we needed really to get over that feedback. And I mean, you know what it did to me? It brought me really to the opposite. I said, now I can make it. I'm really going to make it. I will show them.
Yeah.
And I believe 3 years after I had my first teammate, only one person. And then 3 years after it was 70 people. It was then very, very fast growing over 3 sites in the world. And in the latest role, this was about 130 people in 5 countries of the world. So with leading leaders, so that was obviously too big to be in touch with everybody by myself. So it triggered this opposition. Did I said that's not true? It's not true. I will be the perfect. I mean, I wanted to be a very good and a very perfect leader. I wanted to become that. I felt it was in me, and I didn't listen at all to what they were telling me.
That's a very
And
inspiring.
that's a bit as well an advice which I want to give to
Mhm.
everybody. Go into yourself. There's no one in the world who knows yourself better than yourself. Of course, you might be struggling with in some phases, and you might be not sure about what is the next step. But if you have a good combination of brain and gut, it usually works out. It should work.
Great advice and inspiring story, especially for anyone who's doubting their potential to do anything, basically. That brings me to my last question is where can people find you, especially if they would like to leverage your expertise?
Yeah. So two places, actually three now since
Mm.
today. I worked a lot on my LinkedIn profile. So everything to connect with me is in LinkedIn under my name because at the beginning you start with your personality on LinkedIn. I will start now as well to set up a company profile, but at this moment it's under my name.
Mhm.
And just up in the profile, you find as well a book an appointment, which everybody could click up and really make up an appointment with me. I'm working a lot on my connections in LinkedIn. And maybe if that's interesting for someone, I'm really offering a personal coaching by me for 1 hour free of charge. Someone would be interested to get to know me as the CEO of this company. Not guaranteed that afterwards it will always be me, but at this moment, an hour free of charge would be possible if someone wants to get to know what I am, who I am, and how it feels to see me, to work with me. The second thing is the website is as well, of course, connected to the LinkedIn profile, or you search for penrose-ap.com. There's a little bit more of explanation in the website, then you are able to put that on LinkedIn. And I'm offering actually another coaching approach that's actually solely on individual career. So because I experienced that many people are coming to me and just want to have a couple of sessions about their career. Nothing doesn't need to have anything to do with change. Career is always a topic. So it's a bit more elaborated on that page. Plus, started today in Instagram account.
Brilliant.
That's it.
That's great. I will include links to all of these in the description. So anyway, it's been a great conversation. I'm sure your insights will bring value to our listeners. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Naveen. Really, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and it was very nice talking to you. Your questions were real good ones. I had the feeling you prepared it very, very well. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
All right, goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.